I have heard that you've become so rich, yet it seems you wish me dead, my son. Can't you see that I'm dying? You don't take care of me or your siblings. You're spending money on strangers and ignoring the womb that carried and nurtured you. Why, my son? Auntie Boatemaa and her 3 children, Ahenkorah, Mansa and Badu, lived in a modest mud house surrounded by farmland in Suhum, a town in Ghana's eastern region. The farm was their primary source of income and sustenance. Life became even more challenging for the family after Boatemaa's husband, Mr. Adade, died in a motor accident, leaving her to care for her children on her own. Without Mr. Adade's strength, managing the farm became difficult. The soil wasn't very fertile, and the rains were unpredictable, leading to meager crop yields. Boatemaa and her children worked tirelessly on their small plot, growing maize, cassava and vegetables, but their efforts often fell short. They relied on traditional farming methods, as they couldn't afford modern equipment or fertilizers. Despite their struggles, Boatemaa was determined to keep her children in school, seeing education as a way out of poverty. Ahenkorah, the eldest at 15, was in his final year of junior high school, while Mansa, 12, and Badu, 9, attended primary school. Every morning the children walked several miles barefoot to reach their school. Their uniforms were patched and worn, and they had to share textbooks and notebooks, but they were eager to learn. Ahenkorah dreamed of becoming a doctor, Mansa wanted to be a teacher, and Badu aspired to be an engineer. Food scarcity was a constant worry. Often Auntie Boatemaa sacrificed her portion of food so her children could eat. Meat was a rare luxury, enjoyed only on special occasions or when they caught fish from a nearby stream. To make ends meet, Auntie Boatemaa engaged in small-scale activities like making and selling handmade baskets at the local market, a skill she learned from her mother. Although the competition was fierce, these baskets showcased her creativity. She also collected firewood to sell and sometimes took on menial jobs in the nearby town, such as washing clothes or working as a market porter, carrying heavy loads for a small fee. Through all these struggles, Auntie Boatemaa remained resilient, determined to provide for her children and give them a chance at a better future. One evening, after a long day of toil, Auntie Boatemaa sat with her children around the dim glow of a kerosene lamp. The family had just finished their modest meal of boiled cassava with a small helping of stew. As Auntie Boatemaa watched her children eat, she couldn't help but think of the many challenges they faced and the uncertainty of their future. Mansa broke the silence, her voice a mix of innocence and concern. "Mama, do you think we'll ever have enough to eat every day?" Auntie Boatemaa sighed, a heavy weight pressing on her heart. She forced a smile, reaching out to gently stroke Mansa's hair. "My dear, I pray every day for a better future for us. We may not have much now, but we have each other, and that is what matters most." Ahenkorah, trying to be strong, chimed in. "I will study hard, Mama. I promise I'll become a doctor and take care of you and our family." Auntie Boatemaa's eyes welled up with tears, both of pride and sorrow. "Ahenkorah, my brave boy, I know you will achieve great things. Your dreams give me hope." Badu, the youngest, looked up at his mother with wide eyes. "Mama, why did Papa have to go away? I miss him so much." Her heart ached at the mention of her late husband, and she struggled to hold back her tears. "Badu, Papa loved us very much. He didn't want to leave us. But sometimes life takes us down difficult paths. We must be strong just like he was." Mansa leaned closer, wrapping her arms around her mother's waist. "We'll be strong, Mama. We won't give up." Auntie Boatemaa hugged her children tightly, feeling a mix of sorrow and determination. "Thank you, my children. Your strength gives me strength. Together, we'll face whatever challenges come our way." The room was filled with a poignant silence, each of them lost in their thoughts. Though their journey was fraught with hardships, the bond they shared was unbreakable. Auntie Boatemaa knew that as long as they had each other, there was hope for a brighter future. A few years had passed since the difficult days of Ahenkorah's childhood. He had persevered through senior secondary school with determination, driven by his dream of becoming a doctor and lifting his family out of poverty. However, upon graduation, he was faced with a harsh reality. There was no money to further his education. Despite his excellent grades, the prospect of attending university seemed unattainable. The family's financial situation had barely improved, and the weight of their struggles hung heavily on his shoulders. The burden of poverty threatened to crush his dreams, and Ahenkorah could feel the pressure mounting. One evening, after another long day of helping his mother on the farm, Ahenkorah sat down with Auntie Boatemaa. The sun was setting, casting a warm golden glow over their humble home. "Ma," Ahenkorah began, his voice filled with a mix of resolve and sadness. "I've thought long and hard about this. I can't just sit by and watch as our dreams slip away. I need to do something to change our situation." Auntie Boatemaa looked at her son with concern. "What do you mean, Ahenkorah? You've done so well in school. We'll find a way somehow." Ahenkorah shook his head gently. "Ma, I want to go to Koforidua. I've heard there are jobs there, and I can work to save money for university. It might be the only way to make my dream a reality." Tears welled up in Auntie Boatemaa's eyes as she listened to her son's earnest plea. She knew how hard he had worked, how tirelessly he had studied, and how much he wanted to succeed. But the thought of him leaving home filled her with worry. "Ahenkorah," she said softly, her voice trembling, "I'm proud of you for wanting to take charge of your future. But the city is not easy. It's a big step." Ahenkorah took his mother's hand, his expression firm yet gentle. "I know, Ma, but I can't keep waiting for a miracle that may never come. I need to try. I need to help our family." Auntie Boatemaa sighed deeply, wiping her tears with the edge of her cloth. She knew Ahenkorah was right, and his determination was undeniable. The thought of him venturing out into the world alone scared her, but she also knew that his dreams were too important to be held back by fear. Before Ahenkorah left for Koforidua, Auntie Boatemaa gave him heartfelt advice. "Ahenkorah, as you go to Koforidua, remember the city has many temptations. Don't follow bad friends or give in to peer pressure. Avoid stealing and envy. Rely on your hard work and stay true to your values. The love of money is the root of all evil, so don't let it consume you." Ahenkorah nodded. "I promise, Ma. I won't betray our family. I'll be a good boy and make you proud." The next morning, as the sun rose over the village, Ahenkorah prepared to leave. His siblings, Mansa and Badu, stood by with somber expressions. "Take care of each other while I'm gone," Ahenkorah instructed them. Mansa nodded, holding back tears. "We'll miss you, Ahenkorah." "Yeah, don't forget to bring us something from the city," Badu added with a forced smile, trying to lighten the mood. Ahenkorah hugged them both, feeling a pang of sadness at the thought of leaving his family behind. He turned to Auntie Boatemaa, who was waiting to give him one last hug. "Go with God, my son," she said, her voice thick with emotion. "Remember, we are always here for you, and we love you dearly." With a final wave, Ahenkorah set off down the dusty path leading out of the town. His heart was heavy, but he carried with him the hopes and dreams of his family. As he journeyed toward Koforidua, he felt a renewed sense of purpose, determined to build a brighter future for those he loved. After a few months in Koforidua, Ahenkorah had begun to adjust to his new life. He managed to make friends quickly, and among them were some of the wealthiest young men in the town. They were popular and influential, owning cars and houses despite their young age. These friends would feed Ahenkorah daily, but they never gave him any pocket money, no matter how much he struggled. Ahenkorah observed their lifestyle with fascination. He realized that their wealth could be a path to achieving his dream of furthering his education and helping his family. Intrigued, he approached one of them, nicknamed Stagger, who was the leader of the group. Stagger, Ahenkorah began one day as they sat in a local hangout spot. "How do you guys make so much money? You seem to be living the life everyone dreams of." Stagger chuckled, glancing around to ensure no one else was listening. "Ahenkorah, we don't do any regular business. What we do is called Sakawa, online browsing." Ahenkorah's heart skipped a beat. He had heard whispers of Sakawa, a form of online scam that promised quick riches but came with its own risks and moral dilemmas. He realized then that his friend's wealth came from activities that were both illegal and unethical. "Is that how you all afford these cars and houses?" Ahenkorah asked, his voice a mix of curiosity and caution. Stagger nodded. "Yes, but it's not for everyone. You have to be smart and willing to take risks. The money is good, but you must decide if it's worth it." Ahenkorah found himself at a crossroads. On one hand, joining his friends in Sakawa could offer him the financial freedom he desperately needed to achieve his dreams. On the other hand, he remembered his mother's advice about staying true to his values and the dangers of chasing after money. That night, as Ahenkorah lay in bed, he pondered his situation. The temptation was strong, but he felt torn between his desires and his conscience. He knew that the easy money from Sakawa could come at a great cost, both legally and morally. He thought of Auntie Boatemea's words, "The love of money is the root of all evil." The responsibility he felt towards his family weighed heavily on him, and he wondered whether he could justify taking the same path as his friends. Despite his initial resolve to stay away from the world of Sakawa, Ahenkorah found himself struggling in Koforidua. His dreams of further education and providing for his family seemed further away than ever. The pressure of poverty and his family's needs weighed heavily on his conscience, and he couldn't shake the feeling that time was slipping away. In a moment of desperation, and with the hope of finally achieving success, Ahenkorah decided to confront Stagger again. He sought out his friend and explained his predicament. "Stagger," Ahenkorah said one evening as they sat together, "I want you to show me the way to success. I'm ready to take the risks. My family needs me, and I can't wait any longer." Stagger looked at him seriously. "Ahenkorah, this path is not easy, and there's no turning back once you start. It's a journey of no return. Are you sure you want to do this?" Ahenkorah nodded, determination in his eyes. "I understand the risks, but I'm willing to take them for the sake of my family. I trust you to guide me." Stagger agreed to take Ahenkorah to meet their master, who was known for initiating newcomers into the world of Sakawa. The journey required traveling to a remote village near Ananse Web in the central region of Ghana. They set off early in the morning, driving for hours through the countryside. As they approached the village, Stagger pulled the car over to the side of a dirt road, a few miles away from their destination. "This is as far as we can go by car," Stagger said, turning to Ahenkorah. "Before we proceed, you must cover your face. It's one of our rules. First-timers are not allowed to see the journey to the Grand Master." Ahenkorah hesitated for a moment, the weight of the decision pressing down on him. He took a deep breath and nodded. "I understand," he replied, reaching for the blindfold that Stagger handed him. With his face covered, Ahenkorah felt a sense of vulnerability as he followed Stagger's guidance. They walked for what felt like an eternity, the sounds of the forest around them echoing in the stillness of the air. Ahenkorah's heart raced with anticipation and a hint of fear as he wondered what awaited him at the end of this journey. Finally, they arrived at the hidden location where the Grand Master was said to reside. Stagger removed the blindfold, revealing a secluded clearing surrounded by tall trees. In the center stood a small, unassuming hut. "This is it," Stagger said, his voice barely above a whisper. "The Grand Master will guide you from here." Ahenkorah entered the hut with a mix of apprehension and hope. Inside, he was greeted by an older man with an enigmatic presence. The Grand Master looked at him with piercing eyes, as if assessing his very soul. "You seek the path of wealth and power," the Grand Master spoke in a calm, measured tone. "But remember, every choice comes with consequences. Are you prepared to accept them?" Ahenkorah nodded, feeling the weight of his decision more than ever. "I am ready," he replied. The Grand Master nodded in approval. "Very well. The journey you seek is not just about money, but also understanding and responsibility. If you choose to proceed, there is no going back. Your actions will define your destiny." The Grand Master examined Ahenkorah closely, his gaze seeming to penetrate the young man's very essence. After a moment of intense scrutiny, the Grand Master spoke in a deep, resonant voice. "You are destined for greatness, Ahenkorah," he declared. "You will be the richest among all my followers. Money and power will be yours. But with great power comes great sacrifice." Ahenkorah's heart raced at these words. He could hardly believe that such prosperity was within his reach, yet he felt a chill creeping up his spine at the mention of sacrifice. The Grand Master continued, "To achieve this destiny, you must answer one question. Among your family members, who is dearest to you? Who do you love the most?" Ahenkorah hesitated, feeling a knot form in his stomach. Panic began to rise within him as he realized the implication of the question. He took a deep breath and replied, "I love my mother the most. She is the reason I'm here, the one who sacrificed everything for me." The Grand Master nodded, as if expecting this answer. He began to chant incantations in a language Ahenkorah did not understand. The air in the hut grew thick with an eerie presence, and suddenly the Grand Master gestured toward a large mirror standing in the corner. Ahenkorah watched in disbelief as the image of his mother appeared in the mirror. She was weeping, her eyes filled with sorrow and love. Ahenkorah's own eyes welled with tears, and he felt a deep pain in his chest. The sight of his mother in distress was more than he could bear. "Do not cry, Ahenkorah," the Grand Master warned sharply. "Tears will bring you dire consequences. Control your emotions, for this is the path you have chosen." Ahenkorah struggled to hold back his tears, realizing that any sign of weakness could jeopardize everything. After a few moments, his mother's image faded from the mirror, leaving him feeling empty and conflicted. The Grand Master turned back to Ahenkorah, his demeanor shifting from mysterious to commanding. He waved his hand, and a beautiful piece of cloth appeared before them, richly embroidered with intricate patterns. "Take this cloth," the Grand Master instructed, "and return to your mother. Give her this gift, along with money and other offerings. This is part of your initiation and a symbol of the prosperity that awaits you." Ahenkorah accepted the cloth with trembling hands, understanding that this gesture was both a test and a reassurance. The path he had chosen demanded sacrifices and responsibilities he could barely comprehend. A week after his visit to the Grand Master, Ahenkorah made his way back to his family in Suhum. As he walked through the familiar village, his heart swelled with both pride and apprehension. The decision he had made was heavy on his mind, but he was determined to carry out his promise to his family. When he arrived home, Auntie Boatemaa and his siblings, Mansa and Badu, greeted him with open arms. The house was filled with laughter and warmth as they gathered around to hear about Ahenkorah's new life in Koforidua. "I've found a job, Ma," Ahenkorah announced with a smile, trying to sound as convincing as possible. "Very soon, I'll be making enough money to take care of all of us." His mother beamed with pride, and his siblings looked up to him with admiration. Ahenkorah handed a loaf of bee foster bread to Auntie Boatemaa, a treat they rarely enjoyed. Then, with a sense of both duty and foreboding, he presented her with the beautiful cloth given to him by the Grand Master. Auntie Boatemaa was overjoyed. Tears of happiness filled her eyes as she admired the intricate patterns and vibrant colors. "Thank you, my son," she said, embracing him tightly. "May God bless you and keep you safe. You've made your mother very proud." 2 weeks later, on a sunny Sunday morning, Auntie Boatemaa prepared to go to church. She decided to wear the special attire Ahenkorah had given her, feeling grateful for her son's success and generosity. The church service was uplifting, and she received many compliments on her beautiful new clothes. However, just 5 days after wearing the attire, Auntie Boatemaa began to feel unwell. At first it was a mild discomfort, a lack of appetite, and a general feeling of fatigue. But as the days passed, her condition worsened. She was unable to keep food down, and she grew weaker with each passing day. Ahenkorah, back in Koforidua, was unaware of his mother's condition. But at home, Mansa and Badu were growing increasingly worried. "Mama, you should see a doctor," Mansa urged one afternoon as she sat by her mother's bedside. Auntie Boatemaa shook her head gently. "It's just a passing sickness, my dear. I'll be fine." But deep down, she felt a sense of unease she couldn't explain. It was as if something intangible was pulling at her strength, draining her spirit. As time went on, Ahenkorah found himself deeply entrenched in the world of Sakawa. The promises of wealth that the Grand Master had foretold were becoming a reality. He was making substantial amounts of money online, cashing out $500,000, $1 million, and even more with each transaction. When chatting with clients, Ahenkorah's demands for large sums of money were met without resistance, driven by the spiritual forces that seemed to compel compliance from his targets. With his newfound wealth, Ahenkorah purchased lavish houses and luxury cars, not just in Koforidua, but also in Accra. The allure of success and material possessions consumed him, and he became increasingly absorbed in his lifestyle. His dreams of supporting his family and furthering his education seemed to fade into the background as he reveled in the trappings of wealth and influence. Back in Suhum, Auntie Boatemaa's health continued to decline. She had instructed Mansa and Badu not to inform Ahenkorah of her worsening condition, fearing that it would distract him from his newfound success. "Mama, you need him to know," Mansa pleaded, worried about her mother's deteriorating state. "He should be here with us." But Auntie Boatemaa shook her head. "He's working hard to secure a future for us all. Let him focus on his goals." Despite her words, Badu couldn't hold back any longer. He picked up the phone and called Ahenkorah, breaking the silence his mother had insisted on maintaining. When Ahenkorah received the call from Badu, he was taken aback. Guilt and concern washed over him as he listened to his brother describe their mother's condition. Without hesitation, he drove one of his luxurious cars to Suhum. As he arrived in the village, the sight of his sleek vehicle drew a crowd. People rushed to see the car, and Ahenkorah, caught up in the moment, began throwing money into the air, watching as villagers scrambled to collect the bills. It was a fleeting moment of joy, overshadowed by the real reason for his return. When Ahenkorah entered his family's home and saw Auntie Boatemaa lying weak and frail, he couldn't hold back his tears. He cried bitterly, overwhelmed by a sense of regret and responsibility. The vision of his mother, who had always been his pillar of strength, now reduced to such a state, struck him to the core. Determined to find help, Ahenkorah rushed Auntie Boatemaa to Suhum Hospital. However, after a thorough examination, the doctors were baffled. "There's nothing physically wrong with her," they told Ahenkorah, who felt both relieved and frustrated by the lack of answers. Not satisfied, Ahenkorah decided to take her to one of the best private hospitals in the region. Once again, the doctors found no physical ailments. Auntie Boatemaa was medically healthy, yet her condition continued to worsen. Despite the doctor's assurances, Auntie Boatemaa felt the shadow of death looming over her. She knew that her time was limited, even if modern medicine couldn't explain her symptoms. One evening, as Ahenkorah sat by her bedside, she reached out and touched his hand. "My son, you've done well for yourself," she whispered, her voice weak but filled with love. "But remember, true wealth is measured by the love and integrity we hold, not by the money and things we possess." Ahenkorah's heart ached at her words. He realized that his pursuit of wealth had led him away from the values she had instilled in him, and the cost of his choices now stared him in the face. A month after Ahenkorah had given money and gifts to his mother and siblings, he noticed a troubling change in his life. The once steady stream of money from his online dealings began to dry up, and he found himself increasingly anxious. Every night, he felt a dark presence haunting him, making sleep impossible. As the sleepless nights continued, he realized that something was seriously wrong. Desperate for answers, Ahenkorah returned to the Grand Master, seeking an explanation for the decline in his wealth and his growing unease. The Grand Master listened to Ahenkorah's concerns, his expression grave. "You have violated the rules of the pact," he said, his voice stern. "The money you made was never meant for your family. It is a gift that must remain separate from your personal ties. By giving to your mother and siblings, you have invited consequences upon yourself." Ahenkorah's heart sank. He had believed that using his wealth to support his loved ones was the right thing to do, but now he realized the true cost of his decision. The Grand Master's words echoed in his mind. "The money wasn't for your family. If you continue to share your wealth with them, you will face dire consequences." Ahenkorah felt trapped. The wealth he had amassed seemed worthless if it couldn't be used to help his family. He thought back to the moments of joy when he had showered his mother and siblings with gifts, and how proud he felt. Yet, this same generosity had now become his downfall. The realization hit him hard. He had made a terrible mistake. In his pursuit of success, he had entered into a world where his actions were dictated by rules beyond his understanding. He had placed his family at risk, and the price of his choices was becoming clear. As the days went on, Ahenkorah found himself haunted by regret. His wealth had become a burden, a constant reminder of the wrong choices he had made. The luxurious lifestyle he once enjoyed now felt hollow, overshadowed by the inability to use his resources for the ones he truly cared about. After visiting the Grand Master and realizing the consequences of helping his family, Ahenkorah reluctantly stopped supporting his sick mother and siblings. To his dismay, this decision brought about a swift return of his financial success. Money flowed in abundantly once more, and Ahenkorah amassed a fortune greater than he had ever imagined. The people of Koforidua, impressed by his wealth, began calling him Money Man. Ahenkorah's newfound wealth became the talk of the town. At social events, he was known for showering wedding parties with dollars and cedis, throwing money into the air as crowds gathered to collect it. He would generously hand out 200 cedis notes to strangers. With his lavish lifestyle, he quickly became richer than all his friends involved in Sakawa, living a lifestyle that many envied. Despite the outward displays of success and generosity, Ahenkorah was secretly tormented. He laughed and celebrated with friends, but deep down he was an unhappy man. The weight of his choices and the reality of his mother's illness haunted him daily. He knew that his family's suffering was partly his fault, and the guilt gnawed at him relentlessly. His brother and sister, Mansa and Badu, would frequently call, pleading for money to buy food and medicine for their mother. But Ahenkorah, bound by the constraints of his dark pact, had to refuse them. Each call ended with him making empty promises or offering excuses about his financial situation, leaving his family in despair. One evening, Ahenkorah received a call from Mansa. Her voice was filled with desperation and frustration. "Ahenkorah, we need your help. Mama is getting worse. We don't have money for her medicine, and we can barely afford to eat," Mansa pleaded. Ahenkorah hesitated, knowing he couldn't fulfill her request. "I'm sorry, Mansa. Things are tight for me right now, too," he replied, trying to hide the guilt in his voice. "But you're Money Man, Ahenkorah. Everyone knows how rich you are. Can't you send just a little bit to help us?" Mansa's voice cracked with emotion. "I'll try next month," Ahenkorah said weakly, knowing it was a lie. After hanging up, he sat quietly in his luxurious room, surrounded by opulence that felt increasingly meaningless. As he sat alone, he would often break down in tears, tormented by the decisions he had made and the memories of his mother's sacrifices. He thought back to his childhood, remembering the struggles Auntie Boatemaa had endured to keep him and his siblings in school and provide for them. The contrast between his current wealth and his family's suffering was a constant reminder of the wrong choices he had made. The pressure of maintaining his facade of happiness and success became overwhelming. Ahenkorah realized that no amount of money could fill the void left by the separation from his family. The extravagant parties and endless spending did little to soothe his conscience. Instead, they served as a stark reminder of the true cost of his wealth. One day, as he sat alone in his opulent mansion, Ahenkorah recalled a proverb his mother used to say, "The love of money is the root of all evil." This simple truth resonated deeply within him. He realized that in his pursuit of wealth, he'd lost sight of what truly mattered. Despite his outward image as the money man, Ahenkorah felt isolated and alone. His friends and admirers saw only his prosperity, unaware of the inner turmoil that plagued him. The disconnect between his public persona and private anguish grew wider, leaving him feeling trapped in a life that was not truly his own. Ahenkorah knew he couldn't continue living this way, haunted by the guilt of his choices and unable to help his ailing mother. The more he thought about his situation, the more he realized he needed answers. Determined to understand the true cost of his wealth, he decided to confront Stagger, the friend who had introduced him to this dark world. One evening, Ahenkorah met Stagger at a quiet spot, away from their usual crowd. Ahenkorah finally voiced the turmoil that had been plaguing him. "Stagger, I need to talk to you about everything," Ahenkorah began, his voice trembling slightly. "Why can't I use my money to help my family? Why can I only waste it on strangers and parties while my own mother suffers?" Stagger leaned back, listening with an amused expression. "Ahenkorah, you should know by now that nothing in this life is free. The Grand Master warned us about the cost of this wealth. What did you expect?" Ahenkorah's face darkened as he thought about his mother's condition. "It's more than just money, Stagger. The Grand Master used my only mother as a sacrifice. Now she's sick, and I can't even help her. It's tearing me apart." Stagger chuckled, a sound that sent chills down Ahenkorah's spine. "You think that's bad? Your situation is nothing compared to mine." "What do you mean?" Ahenkorah asked, confused. "I lost my parents long before I met the Grand Master," Stagger explained. "I had nothing to sacrifice but myself, so I gave up my manhood." Ahenkorah's eyes widened in shock. "What are you talking about?" Stagger leaned in, his voice low and serious. "Every night I go to the public toilet at Koforidua Methodist School and eat a cup of feces. That's my sacrifice." Ahenkorah immediately recoiled, feeling his stomach turn at the grotesque revelation. He quickly turned away and vomited, unable to contain his disgust. Stagger watched him, a twisted smile on his face. "You see, Ahenkorah, we all give up something precious and painful for this life. You chose your mother, and I chose my dignity." Once Ahenkorah regained his composure, he turned back to Stagger, anger and despair burning in his eyes. "This is madness, Stagger. Why didn't you tell me the truth from the beginning?" Stagger shrugged. "You wanted wealth and power. This is the price. All of us in the group have sacrificed something. The Grand Master's gifts come at a terrible cost. You should know the Akan proverb, when the drum beats, you dance. When the flute sounds, you dance. But remember, the ground on which you dance was laid by others' sacrifices." Ahenkorah felt a deep sense of betrayal. The wealth he had gained now seemed like a curse rather than a blessing. He realized he was trapped in a cycle of greed and pain, and every luxury he enjoyed was built on the suffering of those he held dear. One day, as Ahenkorah was going about his routine, he received a call from his mother, Auntie Boatemaa. Her voice was frail, but filled with a poignant mix of sadness and longing. "Ahenkorah," she began softly, "I have heard that you've become so rich, yet it seems you wish me dead, my son. Can't you see that I'm dying? You don't take care of me or your siblings. You're spending money on strangers and ignoring the womb that carried and nurtured you. Why, my son? Why have you replaced your intestines with cotton?" Ahenkorah felt his heart shatter with every word his mother uttered. He tried to respond, but his throat closed with emotion. "Please, take care of me before I die," Auntie Boatemaa continued. Mansa and Badu need your financial support. They can't even afford my diapers now that I'm unable to walk to the washroom. My son, remember me before I die." Ahenkorah couldn't speak. Tears streamed down his face as he listened to his mother's desperate plea. Her words echoed in his mind long after the call ended, each sentence piercing through the facade of wealth and success he had built around himself. After the call, he sat alone in his luxurious home, tormented by the choice before him. Should he help his family and face the consequences from the gods of the Grand Master? Or should he continue living in misery, shackled by the riches he had gained at such a high cost? He was reminded of an old Akan proverb his mother used to say, "A child who will not allow his mother to sleep will also not sleep." The proverb's meaning was clear. The pain and neglect he caused would eventually return to haunt him. Ahenkorah cried the entire day and night, his heart heavy with regret and confusion. The wealth that once seemed so desirable now felt like a chain around his neck. The thought of his mother, bedridden and in need of care, broke him. He knew that her sacrifices had paved the way for his life, and ignoring her was like betraying the very essence of his being. The story of Ahenkorah, alias Moneyman, hangs in the balance. Will he choose to support his family and risk facing the wrath of the Grand Master's gods, or will he continue to live a life disconnected from those he loves most? Stay tuned to Ananse Web of Tales to find out what happens to Ahenkorah, his mother, and his siblings in the next episode. Remember, over 98% of our viewers haven't subscribed yet. If you enjoyed this story, please show your support by subscribing to our channel. We'd love to hear where you're watching from and if you're sharing this tale with your family. Thank you so much for joining us on this journey, and we look forward to seeing you in the next episode. Keep watching, and remember, when a monkey becomes too powerful, it challenges the forest.